Hello, welcome to Time Capsules. I'm Carl Qualls, Professor of History at Dickinson College. We've constructed this video series to illuminate some moments in European history. For my students, this series serves as a backdrop to our class discussions, but all viewers are welcome, and we hope that you too will enjoy unearthing the past. The Industrial Revolution was a period of increased manufacturing from about 1760 to 1820. Its development varied from one European country to another, but once it started, it changed lives forever. But revolution is not a word that should be used lightly by scholars. It denotes a period of radical and broad change. The Industrial Revolution lived up to its name because not only did it produce increased wealth and productivity, it also changed daily life. Manufacturing shifted from small to large scale, rural to urban, personal to impersonal, subsistence to technological advancement, and market orientation. Now, rather than working at your own pace and charting time by the sun and moon, people were told what to do and when to do it by factory managers, bells, and whistles. People changed, cities changed, and the economy changed. But why did the Industrial Revolution happen, how, where, and when it did? And how has it changed society? Britain had the first Industrial Revolution, so let's use it as an example. Between 1750 and 1820, Britain experienced unprecedented demographic change. Its population doubled in just 70 years. This illustrates a possible cause and consequence of industrialization. The spread of disease lessened after the 17th century. For example, England's last Great Plague was in 1666. Moreover, the agricultural revolution included field and crop rotation, with nitrogen-fixing crops like clover on what used to be the fallow field. In addition, the enclosure movement replaced small strip farms and consolidated them for greater efficiency. The 17th century agricultural revolution and enclosure movement led to more food, and fewer epidemics led to fewer deaths and a population increase. With more people and the enclosed land now belonging to one person rather than used in common, villages had surplus labor, which can move to cities to look for work. It's at this point that we see a shift from small-scale manufacturing to a factory system. But there's an intermediary step called the putting out system. Let's take clothing as an example, because textiles led the Industrial Revolution. Out on the farm, we would have made our own clothing. Small-scale manufacturers realized that during the winter, farming families had less work to do. So, the manufacturer sent, or put out, the raw material, like cotton, to villagers who then made the trousers and sent them back to the city to be sold. This provided much needed winter income, and the manufacturer had abundant workers and more products. As villagers began to move to towns during the agricultural revolution, however, manufacturers realized that a system change could create greater profit. Putting workers under one roof in a factory prevented loss and delay caused by transportation to villages. Moreover, workers could now be supervised, which should lead to higher quality. Thus, production was faster, cheaper, and better. The energy revolution made the factory system possible. Water and wind have long been used as forms of power for simple machines, but around 1700, coal was first used to power primitive steam engines. With improvements over time, steam engines were adapted to factory labor, first with the textile looms, and then to metals. Technological improvements, like the spinning jenny and water frame, began to automate some parts of production. Spinning and weaving by hand were technological bottlenecks to meeting increased demand. Machines were the industrial solution, and a revolution in spinning created a revolution in weaving, what you can call a reinforcing process. Prices dropped rapidly for yarn and cloth because mechanization increased volume and decreased prices. The percentage of workers in manufacturing increased sharply after 1820. From 1750 to 1820, manufacturing productivity didn't increase much because it was handcraft and small shops and cottage industry in rural areas via the putting out system. By 1820, steam power and an increase in the percentage of the workforce in manufacturing increased productivity. Changes in transportation also aided in the industrialization of Britain. By 1820, canals and paved roads made for smooth transport and less breakage. Britain had a great advantage. Nowhere in Britain is further than 20 miles from a navigable water route, by sea, river, or canal. Widespread development of railroads by 1880 created another boom in commerce. People and bulky items were transported quickly, safely, and cheaply on paved roads, water, and rail. So why else was Britain the leader in industrialization? In addition to new cheap wage labor from the agricultural and demographic boom, Britain had no internal tariffs to hinder trade. That means that a product made in Western Wales would not get more expensive by paying a tax in every county on its way to London. This made goods more affordable and thus increased demand. By mid-century, nearly everyone could afford underwear. Britain also had a central bank and credit market that allowed for investment in new factories. After the English Civil War from 1642 to 1651 and the unification of Scotland and England in 1707, the country embarked on a period of internal stability. This makes investment more appealing. Wars and conflict drain cash and labor and make investment more risky, so stability allows for greater investment. Britain also had a relatively free market, which encouraged innovation. Britain also had abundant natural resources at home, like water and coal, and even more in its colonies, like cotton and dyes. Britain's colonies were also vast markets for finished goods. The efficiency of some factories was so high that Britain could import cotton, manufacture it, and then ship cotton shirts or trousers back to the American or Indian colonies at a cheaper price than in the cotton-producing regions. Britain's navy also controlled the seas commercially and militarily. Within Britain, the high harvest and low prices of agricultural goods left more discretionary income for manufactured goods, which drove up demand. Similar developments happened across Europe, but unevenly. In a very general sense, we see industrialization moving across the continent from west to east and north to south. Scholars debate the reasons, but much of it has to do with agricultural development, the development of rule of law, political stability, and access to credit. Although there's absolutely no historical debate that the Industrial Revolution created vast increases in production, scholars do debate just about everything else. For example, why did Europe industrialize before Asia? Some say it's a matter of resources and transportation. Others say that the European Greek Judeo-Christian ethic is far more conducive to business than Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Others argue that the European colonial powers consciously retarded the growth of their Asian colonies. One of the greatest debates, and one that we'll spend time with in class, is whether the Industrial Revolution was relatively better or worse for humans. Many scholars who prefer quantitative data will look to increase productivity and even higher GDP per capita as evidence of improvement. Others will look at the same data, like GDP, and argue that wealth wasn't spread evenly. Qualitative historians tend to ask questions about child labor, working conditions, pollution, urban poverty, overcrowding, and disease. The good historian asks lots of questions and uses a wide variety of sources before coming to conclusions. How would you go about assessing the effects of the Industrial Revolution? What sources would you use? Which are better? How do you balance qualitative versus quantitative factors? Do we look at effects only on humans? Scholars have been researching the Industrial Revolution for a century. You shouldn't make up your mind after a short video. Dig into books and archives and unearth the past for yourself.